And welcome to another edition of the International Sunday School lesson. Today's lesson is entitled Samson, and it's for June the 25th, 2017. It's the summer quarter lesson number 4, and it's taken from Judges, the 13th chapter, verses 1 through 7 and verses 24 and 25. Okay. Judges 13, 1 and 2. And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. There was a certain man of Zorah, of the tribe of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children. Now, as we had mentioned before, the children of Israel, and throughout the entire book of Judges, it was a repeat of almost the same sequence of events. They would be going along fine, they would backslide, start doing evil, then God would give them over into the hands of an oppressor. They would have a time of revival and cry out to God and begin to change their ways, and then God would send them a deliverer to take them out of the oppressor's hand. So we see that has happened once again. And this time, the oppressors are this group of people called the Philistines. And the best guess of where the Philistines came from, and there had been instances of the Philistines showing up prior to this time, and there were some of them, but there were not that many of them until this time period. And the best estimate or best research guess that archaeologists can come up with where the Philistines came from was the Mediterranean, somewhere in the Mediterranean islands, possibly of Greek descent. And that's where these Philistines came from. And it is, they came and they were a highly technical group of people. They were good at making swords and weapons and chariots and things of that nature. And so when they came and began to have a lot of them there, they began to dominate the area around about there. And that's what had happened. These Philistines had begun to dominate the area and began to oppress the children of Israel, and for a period of about 40 years. And then we are introduced into the parents of Samson. There is his dad, Manoah, and his mother is never named, but we see that he was a Danite and that his mother was barren and had not delivered any children. And this was considered to be a huge tragedy and during that time period for women not to be able to bear children. And that is the situation we find them in. Okay? Going down to the third verse. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold, you are barren and have not borne children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. So we see here how that Samson was being promised to his mother. And we see several other time periods and several other instances throughout the Bible where this had happened to. You think back to Abraham and Sarah, how that God had promised a child to this barren woman who was very advanced in years. We think of John the Baptist's parents, how that God had promised a child to them. And other times in the Bible where this had happened. And this is happening this time, and we see where Samson's mother was a woman of faith and took this promise very seriously. Okay? Now, the 4th and 5th verse reads as follows. Therefore, be careful, and this is continuing the angel of the Lord speaking. Therefore, be careful, and drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. So we see several things at this point. The angel has set the mandate or set the parameters for Samson's birth and for Samson's life. And he is to be a Nazarite, which was a very strict vow that people went under. They were not allowed to have anything related to grapes at all. No plucking grapes off the vine, no wine, no strong drink, no nothing. And also, too, of course, now this would apply for all of the children of Israel. They were not to eat anything unclean. And they were also, too, not to cut their hair. And that is important as you study on and want to read more about the life of Samson. This business about not cutting his hair. Because that's how he was brought down when his hair was cut and he broke the Nazarite vow by allowing his hair to be cut. Okay? And the angel goes on to say that he will save Israel from the hand of the Philistines. Now, unlike a lot of other judges, Samson really did not take a leadership position and direct and that kind of thing among the children of Israel. His was a very delivering, violent type of judgeship where he brought the Philistines down and fought with the Philistines. And even in his death, those of you that have read the story and have heard the story before, how that he allowed his hair to be cut, and he was put under subjection to the Philistines. His hair began to grow out, and he brought down the building when his hair grew back out, and he killed more Philistines in his death than he even did in his life. And but anyhow, okay, going on, the 6th and 7th verse. Then the woman came and told her husband, "A man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God. Very awesome. I did not ask him where he was from, and he did not tell me his name. But he said to me, Behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. So then drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death." So we see how that she goes back and talks with her husband, and how that they got in agreement about how they were going to rear Samson, and how that he was going to be a Nazarite from the womb, and they were going to raise him into according to the rules laid out by this angel. And it's important, just as a side comment, it is important for parents to do come to an agreement about how they raise their children. And it is important that, that you take your children to church and you work together in this manner. And that is what the parents of Samson had decided and in their heart had committed to do. Okay? Now, jumping down to the 24th verse, "And the woman bore a son and called his name Samson. And the young man grew, and the Lord blessed him." So we see how that the words of the angel, the word that God had given the angel to give to Manoah and his wife, that this word was being brought forth, and Samson grew, and the Lord blessed him. Okay, down to the 25th verse. "And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him in Mahanadan, between Zorah and Eshtaol." Okay, so we see that this phrase, the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him. And we see this all through the Old Testament. When people are called into the work of God and were given a mission, how that God, the Spirit of God, would come upon them. And the Spirit of God began to stir Samson and come upon him, and how that he began to grow and get prepared for this life that he was going to live in, delivering the children of Israel from this oppression of the Philistines. Now, there's much more to the story of Samson that is actually in today's lesson. We know from other Sunday school lessons we may have sat through, or sermons we have sat through, or maybe even movies you may have seen about the life of Samson, how that Samson had grew and had worked a deliverance at times in various ways, but he got caught up into some things, and he got caught up into this thing with Delilah, and she had coerced him into letting his hair being cut, and to tell her what the secret was about his great strength. And it had put Samson into subjection, and how that his hair, as it began to grow back, and see, God is the God of second chances. And we see that in the life of Samson, how that God had given Samson a second chance, and Samson's last work was the greatest work of his life, and how that he had gotten his strength back and destroyed the building with all the Philistines in it. It was a building with all the very principal Philistines in it, and it was a devastating blow to the Philistines. It took them a while to recover from that, and he wrought a great deliverance in the house of Israel when that happened. And let me just close today's lesson off with telling each and every one of us, reminding each and every one of us, if we find ourselves caught up into mistakes and sin that we have gotten caught up in, that we do know a God who is the God of second chances. And the life of Samson is a perfect example of that. How that God had allowed Samson to come back, and there was a restoration there, and Samson was able to fulfill his mission even though he had went pretty far astray. And God forgave him and gave him the opportunity to fulfill his mission. And let me encourage you, if you ever find yourself in that position, to turn your heart back to God and to repent and ask Jesus to forgive you and to enable you and restore you to your former work and your former duties in His body. Well, friends, good Lord willing, we'll be posting another YouTube video next weekend. Thank you for listening.